Hey there folks, Champesk here bringing you another audio commentary. Today I'm going to be doing a 2 versus 2 game between SRS and We Made Fox. It's going to be a game between Dowaq and Violet against, I think, Moon and Lynn. Obviously, Lynn now in We Made Fox. He's replaced Soccer in the 2 versus 2s. Obviously Lynn a bit better, Orc presumably, than Soccer. But it's a bit of a shame really, because I think Moon and Soccer really had a great dynamic going. But certainly I'm sure Moon and Lynn will have something interesting planned for these games. I'm going to be doing both these. There's two best of, or there's two versus 2s now between We Made Fox and SRS, and so I'm going to probably cover them both. We'll see how long this one game goes. I have a fair bit of time. We'll have to see what I have time for. But certainly I'm very excited to see what they have planned. Lynn actually going for an early Voodoo Lounge, which is probably going to mean that they're going to be going for harassment early on. We'll have to see exactly what's going to be happening here. Two Blade Masters from both the Orcs, a Keeper of the Grove actually coming out for Moon here, which is going to mean that we're going to be seeing harassment. This is quite a good strategy either against a human or an undead who's going Fiends. You can be pretty sure that Dowaq's going to be going Fiends, despite actually being sort of the king of ghouls as he's known. It's just in a 2 versus 2, you can't really go ghouls, and Fiends are just really quite nice, especially with Death Knight getting the aura and everything as well. And so obviously the point of going Keeper of the Grove and Blade Master is that you can just keep Fiends in place and then get lots and lots of free hits off on them, and then hopefully actually manage to do some significant damage, slow their attack, and just sort of stay ahead all game. And this looks like exactly what their strategies could be. I assume we're going to be seeing one Ancient War Huntresses, and then tech from Moon as well, and probably a fairly quick tech from Lynn at the same time. Obviously he has had to spend a bit more economy into buying items, and he can't really afford to sell his TP, but I think it's quite possible that he won't actually even buy a circlet, just because he's going to be going for some pretty quick harassing. And Violet now actually scouting out this Keeper of the Grove as well, and so hopefully we'll be seeing some interesting stuff here. Obviously Moon sort of has quite a history with 2 versus 2s, where he's just had sort of such the best luck for teams. He's had Soccer, Lynn, Grubby, Lucifer, really he's sort of been a part of almost all of the best teams in the 2 versus 2 teams. I think the biggest exception would probably be Grubby and Todd, who were sort of a really legendary 2 versus 2 team, but really all the others I can think of have involved Moon. And I think it's quite possible that Moon Lynn could be a very deadly combination. We'll have to see exactly what they have planned here. Moon are taking a bit of damage on his Keeper of the Grove, but certainly it's not the end of the world, because if that Blade Master ever stays around for too long, Moon can just entangle on and Lynn can get a lot of free hits on. But now I'm going straight for this Fiend. Lynn actually decides not to engage here. Moon bringing in a Wisp might try and get a Detonate off and hit this a Skeleton as well as the Death Knight. We'll have to see. He'll have to make sure to avoid obviously the entangle, and that's exactly what he does. And so he does drain a bit of mana. We'll get that one Fiend kill, so a very nice early start. Obviously that's sort of basically half of Dowaq's army basically, because he's going to want to bring those ghouls back, so it's a pretty bad hit. And Lynn will manage to get his Blade Master away at very low health, but he did obviously have that early shot, so he can salve up. And I think we are seeing text from both Moon and Lynn at this point, and I think, yeah, one from Dowaq is not from Dowaq, but from Violet. Obviously Dowaq's going to be taking a bit later, just because he is going to need to be rebuilding these Fiends that he's lost, but probably he'll try and get a pretty quick tech anyways, or quicker than you would against, for example, a Demon Hunter. But Moon now just coming straight back in along with Lynn, obviously trying just to keep the SRS team as busy as possible. And actually Lynn taking a fair bit of damage on his Blade Master, will be forced to run it away, and could just salve up and then try and run back later. He has bought a Boots for his Blade Master as well, which is obviously could actually be less important than it usually is, because of that entangling roots. But Dowaq now managing to get a couple Fiends out. He was building his 4th now, and I imagine he will start attack pretty soon based on his number of Fiends. He probably is a bit satisfied with his army at this point. And Moon now running in, no Boots actually. Lynn might want to transfer the Boots to the Keeper of the Grove so he can get that entangle. Actually manages to get that anyways with the tremendous range of entangling roots. And so actually Lynn going for some free hits on the Blade Master here. I think he knows he can kill this Grunt anyways, because Moon's going to need to get that subsequent entangle, and so he just wanted to get some extra hits off on that Blade Master, and that's a pretty sensible thing to do. Meanwhile, Dowaq now creeping out his Death Knight. Obviously Violet's going to be helping him do this, because it's so important to get your Death Knight to level, actually both 2 and 3. Obviously that aura is very good, and that coil is very good as well when you get to level 2 coil, and Lynn actually doing a bit of scouting with his grunts, but it does bring them back, and I imagine we'll be seeing a couple huntresses around for Moon to complement these grunts, but mainly they're just going to be saving up for their tier 2 armies, and I imagine we'll be seeing dryads, raiders, possibly Spirit Walkers and a Shadow Hunter. We'll have to see exactly what Moon's plan is. I'm not sure if Moon's going to go for a second hero, really, because that's, you generally do want to go for one, but we'll have to see exactly what he goes for here. Meanwhile, Lyn and Moon actually creeping in conjunction now, creeping quite a tricky camp and using dust actually to make sure there's nothing around. I'm not sure why Moon really has his wisp here, but certainly it's not a huge amount of lumber he's lost, and Moon tends to build a whole bunch of extra wisps just so he can afford to lose some, and also considering the number of expansions he's likely to build in any given 2 versus 2, it makes sense just to have some around. And we are now seeing 1 bestiary, no Spirit Lodge. We are likely to see a late Spirit Lodge from Lyn, just because obviously the Dryads don't get hit by the Spirit Lodge. Moon picking up a Naga second, actually. It's quite an interesting choice. Obviously it's works quite well with the Keeper of the Grove, just in terms of keeping units sort of in place and keeping them around for the Blade Master to get hits off, especially in conjunction with the Shadow Hunter and then Ensnare as well, which is now researching from Lyn. And so we could be seeing sort of quite a aggressive game from We Made Fox here, because obviously the Naga is a very good aggressive hero, but really doesn't get as sort of as good as other heroes when you get to high levels, so it might not be the best hero for that situation. Meanwhile, Violet's now going for a bestiary and a Spirit Lodge, obviously an earlier Spirit Lodge, just because Spirit Link is so good, especially on Fiends. Actually, I love Spirit Linked Fiends combined with Ensnare, and you can just do so much. You just have such high DPS output. Then when you have your Lich as well, you can really do a fair bit, and that's what Grubby and Happy used to do until recently. I think Happy sort of hasn't been playing in WC3L recently, and there's rumours that I think he's either going to quit EG or perhaps even has, and so we'll have to see what happens there, which is a bit of a shame, really. We haven't seen much of him. I think I checked the lineups and it was Ciara playing instead of Happy as sort of the second in EG, so that's a bit of a shame, because obviously Ciara just not the player that that Happy is. And meanwhile, we do now finally have that level 3 on the Death Knight after some really intensive creeping, and that intensive creeping has left the Blade Master at level 1, because Violet's just been giving his grunts basically to Dowaq to use, and so he will need to level up his Blade Master quite quickly, really, because a level 1 Blade Master really isn't that effective, especially against sort of Dryads, Keeper of the Grove, Naga, Raiders, Hex, there's just so much that's going to be damaging. And We Made Fox now creeping together and doing some very aggressive creeping. SRS actually creeping together as well, but much less aggressive creeping here. And first Spirit Walker is now out as well. I imagine as soon as the first fight comes in, we will see Spirit Link. Obviously, since there's only one Spirit Walker, you don't really want to waste your Spirit Link before you know you can use it. And this one We Made Fox Watcher Ward is now scouting out what's going on here, and we do actually have Endurance Ore on the Shadow Hunter now. It's such a good item. I mean, that's probably the best item they could have got. Obviously, Warsong Battle Drums would have been nice as well, but I think that's pretty much the best that they could have hoped for. They must be very happy with that drop, and they've just left the scraps now for SRS, who will now get those couple of creeps. We'll get level 2 on a Violet does get level 2 on a Shadow Hunter, and looks like we might see a bit of a fight here. Violet now getting one snare off, going for but looks like Moon's just gonna TP out, and a coil goes off on that Fiend to save it. Fiend's 1-0 upgrades. Obviously, you are likely to see lots of upgrades on those Fiends because they do sack with the Destroyers, which you're probably gonna see eventually from Dowaq if he gets that far in his tech. And meanwhile, Moon actually has a very nice placement of his Ancient of War here. Obviously he didn't really have any use for it, and it's going to mean that SRS is actually caught in a bad position when We Made Fox engages now, and Speed Scroll being used very nicely here just to get all of We Made Fox's units right into the middle of the battle here. And the Ancient of War has been uprooted, and Dowaq now losing one Fiend. It looks like he might actually lose some more. Lyn has actually brought in his peons as well, but they're not Spirit Linked. I think that's because Lyn did have that late Spirit Lodge, and we are now seeing a TP now from SRS. Actually, I think they were just taking too much damage on all their units as opposed to hero focus, and I think that's really what you want to be doing with this sort of army. Obviously, the Keeper of the Grove should just be constantly ensnaring Raiders, and just trying to keep them as busy as possible. No expansions yet from from We Made Fox, and I think it's quite likely that we will see one. Obviously, Moon's are famous for expanding in 2 versus 2. Moon famous for expanding, but especially in 2 versus 2, and it's probably in the We Made Fox contract that Lynn has to start expanding now that he's joined We Made Fox. It wouldn't have surprised me if we saw Lynn Lynn putting up an expansion in one corner and Moon putting one up in the other corner or something, just to try it, because SRS have been keeping sort of together this whole game. The Lich is now out for Dowaq. Does have an orb obviously, but still only level 1, and that's going to go down so quickly just because of all that focusing power that I've been talking about this whole game. And it's a bit unfortunate. Cloak of Flames for the Blade Master now. Really, you couldn't hope for a worse item. I mean, it's not a terrible item in 1 versus 1, but in 2 versus 2 there's just so many units, and any hero that tries to get into the middle of all these units is just going to die so quickly, especially to something like, especially to an undead. And so we might see Lynn keep it, we might see him sell it, just because obviously something like a heal scroll would really be a much more useful item, I think. And we are now seeing 50 food for Lynn and 49 for Moon, compared to 50 for Dowaq and 47 for Violet. So pretty even food count. A really ambitious Dust there, not getting anything, but obviously if he had caught the Blade Master around, like, he could have done a whole bunch of damage. He would have killed that Blade Master definitely, because he has a